6:51, and I am going to call this meeting of the Beaufort County Board of Education Academics Committee meeting to order. This is a hybrid meeting, and those of us who are present are in the District Educational Services Center. Those in the room are myself, Kathy Robine, Earl Campbell, Angela Middleton, and Ingrid Boatwright, and Molly, and Dr. Stratos. Virtual is Robin Cushenberry. So at this time, call the meeting to order, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that. Angela needs to mute her computer. There you go.
That we approve the minutes.
The agenda.
No, the agenda.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 2-0. Mr. Mel Campbell absent from the vote. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, being none, then the next thing on our agenda is the approval of May 26, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the May 26, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
And I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on that. The approval of the May 26 committee meeting minutes. If you approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, 2-0. Okay, the only thing on our agenda today, a very important item, is the Instructional Initiatives for 21-22. And Dr. Mary Stratos, of the Director of ISD, will present to us.
Good afternoon, board members, and thank you for this opportunity of sharing some of the instructional initiatives tied with the upcoming academic school year from the Division of Instructional Services. I would like to add, if we could please note that these are instructional resources at point of conversation. There will probably be questions regarding additional personnel, as you'll see in the slides, and we'll be able to open up and have conversation at that time. So Mrs. Cushenberry, if you may proceed to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to give background information regarding how this presentation was put together and how schools were identified as tiered schools, or the language we'll hear me utilize as partnering schools in our instructional initiatives for the upcoming school year. We utilize diagnostic data prior state SC ready and pass, and end of course exam information was reviewed intensely, school attendance, high school graduation rate, as well as student discipline. I share those points because as we as a district developed our academic recovery plan for the upcoming school year, these were required points of data for review. That plan was submitted timely to the state prior to May 28th and received backward notification from the state of its approval. And elements of this presentation come from that plan. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. What I've identified on this slide are our partnering schools. Our goal was that we do a rollout of some of the tools that have been shared with you, especially in the area of performance matters, as we're looking at the utilization of formative assessments. And you'll hear more about that detail as we get to the last slide in this brief presentation. But these schools are also identified on the data points that I shared with you earlier. Obviously, I don't have graduation rate tied to them. I have the high schools listed here, but our high schools have been point of conversation, intense conversation within our division, and shared this conversation with top leadership with Dr. Bradley and Dr. Rodriguez.
So can I clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say partnering schools, these are the schools that are,
You'll see will be mostly identified as tier 3 schools, the resort for not only resources, because the resources are open to all of our schools, but what I will share more is the rollout of formative assessments, and some of the language you'll see in here that's going to say non-negotiables, but I'm going to try to use more of the language as we proceed in the school year, that some things that we'll be tight about and some things that may be a little looser at schools, right? Because two things I didn't care for as a principal was that word that I hated when people would say things were mandated. I would turn it around and say that things were required practice because they were best practice. And I'm trying to get a similar language for us to use that's not as harsh, but it is something that we recognize as best practice for utilization. So these are our partnering schools that you'll have been identified as our tier 3 schools. Slide 4 identifies, just as a reminder to not only us, but this is going to be something shared with actually assistant principals and principals on the use of the continuous improvement model, which is at the base of the work that we're putting forward for the upcoming school year. We notice that student achievement and learning is at the center. And our resources, actually everything's based on research, are all circulating, right? Our job is to take care of the children and the teachers, right? By doing the both of them, we'll be able to create higher achievement.
do you want us to ask questions?
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
What's a learning team facilitator?
All right, so let me walk through this from the very top. A learning team facilitator, or an LTF, actually partners with the person next on this circle. That would be the instructional coach. What a learning team facilitator does is actually do the preparation for PLCs, the detailed work of pulling student evidence, pulling the data, working with the administrators to say with regard to lesson plans or units of study, helps in the identification of areas of success, areas that I like to call deltas, areas of improvement. And then you work with that person, that coach of instruction, to that specific content area, either be math, reading, or in some cases, we have science coaches as well. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, may I ask a quick question? Is the learning team facilitator a district office personnel or is someone that's already at the school? And how is that person identified? Is that their sole role?
So part of that is out of the request from ESSER 2 funding.
Mm-hmm.
I have requested an LTF for our tiered schools.
Mm-hmm.
The ESSER 2 funding has been approved.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the process first of taking care of our school sites and working on the professional development component of that LTF. Probably may come out of our pool of coaches, someone who has demonstrated high expertise, has high respect of their peers in the building, but understands that there's certain business that needs to be executed. So there would be a school site person who's technically, though, working with the hand and support from the district. I have to share that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Learning team facilitator, you said they're the ones pulling the data.
Well, teachers and everyone are responsible for pulling data as well.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yes, so, but when you're really putting together a strong professional learning meeting, there's significant planning put to that really, yes, myself as a teacher, I should be pulling, especially in performance matters where it's gonna be almost timeless to get information, but in putting information together, cross-checking the information of what we've measured to your lesson plans, cross-checking that information to instructional information in the classroom, so inform, that's that LTF person working with that instruction, the coach of instruction. The standards-based instruction we recognize as key. And then the professional learning communities where we try to tie the process of improving teaching and learning. To some of us in the district, this model is a model that you're familiar with, but I think it's been dormant for a period of time. It is a model that is very successful. It is key to the continuous improvement model. And what it also allows the opportunity of having an LTF, it lets your coaches to work with whom? Teachers more, instead of being more doing planning. And it allows the teachers to do what? do the instruction, and bring the student evidence back to the table. On slide 5, it shares with you initiative information that I proposed to our superintendent, and it things will in alignment. We recognize Tier 1 schools will have access to all district resources on demand. They will have instructional coaches, increased amount of interventionists, social workers, and behavior management specialists. I know some of you are familiar with the interventionist being referred to as a BI. I utilize the term, they're an interventionist. We are also going to be very specific this year that all interventionists will have access to professional development, the same that I would receive as a teacher. So as we're rolling out in August for Reading Plus, let's say, interventionists will have access to that training professional development as well, all right? Dreambox will be, because interventionists are going to have training in those domains as well. So they're going to be using the same tools that our classroom teachers and have familiarity with it. As you look at Tier 2, this is where you see the language of phasing in formative assessments. Again, same reiteration. But if you look at the last line where it says credit recovery student support team, that is targeted for our high schools to start earlier in the academic school year, so that you can have someone who is a classroom certified teacher, have a roster of students who are rotating or, and some of the language that has actually come from our board members, how are we being creative at serving our kids? Well, I may have kids who may need to leave earlier because they work. They need credit recovery. They may need face-to-face for this period. That is the goal with that position, as well as having someone who actually helps work with that person. So in some places you may refer to as a graduation coach, but I would like this person also to be managing an Edgenuity lab for catching our students early enough so that we don't try to play catch-up for you as a 12th grader.
Can I,
Yes, ma'am.
because I'm a Ingenuity, I know I hear the term, I understand it loosely. Is that a new program or is that what we've always had?
Actually, it's a program that's been vetted here in Beaufort County for a number of years.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will share with you what Beaufort does, and I would say stellar. They align the Ingenuity standards to units of study. So they're not utilizing a proficiency model where students can demonstrate proficiency and mastery out in grade. We actually have units of study, so what standards you missed from the classroom, that's what you go back and redo.
Is it an online program?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what.
Yes,
And
it
then,
is.
Sorry, you said a credit recovery student support team. Would it be a team in each school or is that like going to be a district?
I'm looking for, my recommendation that it is a team within, team within each high school.
One more quick question. Phase and formative assessments. We're talking about so Tier 1, they're not going to have formative assessments?
Well, they would have that are teacher made. I want us to recognize when you go from not having common assessments in 32 schools and you roll out to all 32 schools at the same time, that can create a lot of tension and the capacity of being effective at training people and communicating may not be the same as if you phase it into 10 schools, another 10 schools, and another 10
So
schools.
Tier 1 will have it eventually,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
you're starting Tier 3
100%.
and going back.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, it's just you guys are all
No,
teachers and
that's
I'm like
well,
trying to.
No,
But they're
that's,
great.
that's good, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a question about the formative assessments too.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's developing them?
So under our good afternoon, sir. Under our formative assessments, right now, we have multiple teams, actually a whole array of teams doing curriculum writing.
Okay.
Each team has a coordinator. Those coordinators are leading a rubric of information responsible to units of study. They are the coordinator also of the formative assessments. Those formative assessments are then going to be vetted by Melissa Murray, Nikki, and Colleen. So we put it in that
Yeah,
ready, a
good.
tiered model.
And that's, yeah,
Yes,
great.
ma'am. And what's been creative this year that we have not had in the past, they've normally done curriculum writing on the weekend. Our attitude is no, you're a professional, you can work from home. We have this person vetting, and before your stipends have been released, there has been vetting, review of units, and then the stipends have been released. So we have been a little more systematic at our work, but yet a little more flexible for the educators. And it has worked out, I have to share, very well. And we have curriculum writing from K all the way up to, right now, 9th grade for human geography, as well as in gifted and talented and the fine and performing arts.
Robin, for your information, Mr. Mel Campbell just came in. And Mr. Campbell, we are on slide number 6. Are we done with 5?
We're moving on to 6.
All right.
We hadn't finished 5, I don't think you, tier 3, right?
Yes, ma'am. So if we continue on to tier 3 schools, and I'm gonna use one of my schools most specifically, when you look at the very last line there for class size reduction personnel. When asked to schools that we've identified on slide 3, our partnering schools in the Initiative for Academic Improvement, what is the one thing I can give you that could really make another big difference? And I will share, and I did not give any research in the front end, I asked informally. Right now, I may have classes of 21 to 1, 18 to 1. If I can get my class sizes and my neediest classes to 14 or 15 to 1, will make the difference. Kept my mouth quiet because the research shows what? Anything over 15, it doesn't matter if it's 17 or 28. Because the teacher needs to get appropriate time to do a full rotation of checking for depth of learning and giving descriptive feedback. So that was a request. I never prompted, shared that information with Dr. Rodriguez, but that is part of the goal. So when you look at slide 5, on the tier 3 schools, you'll see class size reduction requests of educators.
Right.
And as I shared with Dr. Rodriguez, I recognize that part of this presentation is really tied to personnel. But I also recognize we're not going to meet all this by August 16th. This is a goal that we're working forward, Dr. Rodriguez. In a perfect world, I would have it completed on August 16th. But I also recognize I'm also tied to help fund these released from the federal government. So there's other factors in tied with this, and I want to be transparent in conversation. Any questions? Can I go back and share something?
Can I ask about
Yes.
slide 3? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I should have
ma'am.
asked it then. I noticed that Hilton Head Middle School isn't listed here, and they're one of our TSI schools.
Yes, so that's going to be a little more information I'll also receive at our board meeting, and that
Okay,
I do have it, but I don't want to put it
That's
out
fine.
front. But let me give you the why.
okay,
I do
yeah.
need to give you why. Hilton Head Middle School is very much involved in our resources that we are providing. I need everyone in this room to recognize that. They haven't been identified mathematically as a tier 3 school because they have had a progression of improvement over time.
Okay, got it.
Resources are provided for all our schools, especially even in the area, and I had conversation after speaking with one of our board members earlier because they put forward a very important question and an idea and use of interventions. Right? So one thing I push very hard is I don't have instructional coaches funded at all my high schools. Only 2 out of 6 have an instructional coach. Our ESSA funding has put forward a request for an instructional coach at every high school. I think that's important. I would not have been able to be successful without one. Now, as a tiered school, right, then we have to determine which high school really needs an LTO. It does make a difference, and that we haven't landed on yet, but those are things that we're working out for the high schools because their data hasn't shown as much critical mass yet, but I am still waiting for the release of the OCs because we do recognize all our data right now is embargoed, right, from
Yeah.
the last sitting. So recommendation was this morning, I had a conversation with a board member and then I had a conversation with our CFO, was the opportunity for interventionists at all our schools would make a significant difference.
So I guess, my question about that though is the interventionists are gonna come from our teaching pool, which then deletes and has more openings for us. And
That's
we
why
certainly don't wanna start school without teachers in classrooms. So it's kind of that circular issue, right?
that's where my commentary with the being realistic.
Yeah.
That I will not have all these personnel lined up by the 16th, but who's our priority right now is having that teacher in front of our students.
Correct.
That hiring process must continue.
Yeah.
I recognize the amount of openings I have within my division, but the priority has been first our classrooms. In conversation with Pat Frieda, actually early this week and then again earlier this morning, she already has interventionists on campus. But what would it do, Pat, if you had this?
Yeah.
And all you could hear in the back was like, well, I could do that. And that's what you want to hear from my seat. If I give you this, have you had that thought or do you have a prospective plan for? So that I shared that with CFO. So we're looking at schools who, and it's going to include our priority and our schools who are this partnering, will probably have their interventionists funded out of the general fund.
So it's recurring versus
the 3-year limit that's tied to ESSER.
That's
So that was the other part of conversation. I wanted confirmation this morning as well, and share that conversation with Dr. Rodriguez so that I could have that commitment. Okay? So I want to put out a thank you, because sometimes the questions I receive from board members are very provocative. There's another point that's brought forward, and it lends opportunity to build on. And I want to say thank you. So slide 5, we recognize formative assessments will be something that we're holding very tight. And there will be an expectation of utilization, an expectation of using that data to help drive instruction. When we have our LTFs aligned with our coaches, so they could really dive deeper into effective LT learning team meetings. One of the things we are also going to do this summer is take Richard DeFore's rubric of effective PLCs, tie that into a survey, because our coaches have just completed 8 modules of training, and we want to be able to really get what really is your perspective of where you are, where you see yourself in learning team meetings. So as we do the LTF team training, we're a little more effective in what we roll out as well. You know this as instructional coaches, interventionists, learning team facilitators. We recognize social workers in our BMS we've already had on board. The credit recovery student support team for our high schools. Again, that's good. My goal is that it will be rolled out at every high school. And then the class size reduction. Next slide, Mrs. Cushenberry. So we see on the next slide, it's going to give you a little more information on the instructional personnel, some of the a little more instructional support. So if we go to tier 3 first, I was just taking the language of people into program. Does that make sense? So the formative assessments, the PLCs, working with those learning team facilitators, the instructional coaches, again, the interventionists, right? And then the life science rigor walkthrough, and I want to just take a moment there for that add-on, because that's going to happen in two schools. I mean, 2 of the tiered areas first, and it's going to roll out to everyone. What that is just an informal survey that every school you can have consistency at training. What is the rigor in the classroom? Is the instruction aligned to the standard that we identified? Is the delivery of the instruction aligned to the standard? Because sometimes we have the standard, I'm teaching the standard, but is what you're doing, is that aligned to the complexity of the standard? So that is going to be a series of training. It is going to be a data collection tool that can be utilized by who the school leader designates, either themselves, an AP, or their learning coaches to build capacity, but that would be a rollout at all our schools as well.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So the professional development is under this titles for the district instructional coaches and the district content coordinators. I have 2 questions. So can you talk, are those people going to be doing the walkthroughs, or is it administrators that are going to be doing the walkthroughs? And can you just let everyone know what the CASTLE stands for? I think that's really important because it's something new and it's been around for a while, but it's more heightened because of what we're just coming off of.
Yes, so there's 2 things, and let me bring forward with the language of, I'll build with CASTLE first. CASTLE made their platform on social emotional learning. I understand this conversation with regard to CASTLE, social emotional learning, and critical race theory. I'm looking at the free support of materials through CASTLE, so that we can heighten the awareness of our teachers to the needs of kids in the classroom. So if there's a good relationship, that is a model of CASTLE. Does the teacher say, good morning, hello to everyone, hello Dr. Mr. Campbell, hello Mrs. Boatwright, hello Mrs. Middleton, hello Mrs. Robine, hello Mr. Campbell? Or is that teacher skipping someone in the room? That's a technique of CASTLE. Basically more for the environment that's created than for anything beyond that for context. We want to be able to have environment in the classroom that provides all students with acknowledgement, provides descriptive feedback, that is a quality of the CASTLE model, that we say, great job, Mrs. Robine, versus good job. Simple little tweaks like that build on that confidence of the student. That is the lens that I'm looking for, that slice only. And actually, it's good teaching.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
but I will add, there's a tool tied to that, the CASA, that, what is that environment that I'm creating for my kid? Right, basically, that's what that is tied to. You had another question, Mrs. Robin, I do
So
apologize.
are the coaches, who's gonna be, and maybe I'm like just putting my spin on this as my familiarity with walkthroughs.
Mm-hmm, so you were asking whom? Yes, ma'am.
Who does the
Yes,
walkthroughs?
ma'am.
Because I have worked in districts where we had only the administrators do the walkthroughs, and you always left a piece, where with some feedback. And then I also worked in a district where we had I forget what they were called, the teachers that came in that actually
Here we call them mentor teachers.
did evaluations
Right,
on
yeah,
us and
yeah,
stuff.
master
So,
teachers,
master-
yeah.
So, and sometimes it was easier to take the feedback from the teachers than it was from the administrator. So I'm just curious.
So Mrs. Cushionberry, may you go back to slide 5 for a moment? If you look on this list, and we have instructional coaches and LTFs, the best model we recognize is being able to have, if Mrs. Boatwright and Mr. Campbell are administrators at the school site, you may be observing me for observational purposes or 3-minute walkthroughs. But if both of you are the LTF or coach in the building and you want to build my capacity, I may listen to you teacher to teacher and not feel that you're evaluating me as much as I would feel that I'm being exposed to an evaluation by an administrator. Not every teacher has the capacity to do the separation or recognize that my principal wants to build my capacity.
Yeah.
There's always that fear, like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Where you two or the 3 of you coming into my room may be able to give me a different feeling of building up capacity. So that's the model that I would be asking to utilize. And we do have that like on Teams. But that information should be kept away from the administrators up until it's a point that you're either not having improvement, it is detrimental to students. There's certain things you have to get. You are my interventionist for teaching and learning as well. Does that make sense? For delivery of instruction. Help me be better.
Right. So by doing it that way, it almost pits me against her. I don't want my teachers to think that when I walk through and that I'm looking for negative.
No.
I'm looking for, so I think I would hope that we're building the capacity of our administrators to look for positives and to grow their teachers as well. But
It shouldn't just, if it's a learning institution, it shouldn't just be the administrators building that capacity. I should be able to look to my colleagues as well, as an educator, as a professional.
Mr. Campbell has something to say.
No,
No?
just
Okay.
listening to,
All right,
I'm hearing the same things over and over. I mean, I think if I had a question, it'd be, how are we vetting the coaches and what's the next tier there, the interventionists?
So if we look at the top of,
Who are these people?
okay, so if we go back, and I'll go to slide 5, Mrs. Cushionberry. And if we look in the gold area,
Yeah.
these are the teams who should be working and vetting our coaches. So when the executive director has a conversation with the principal, that principal should be able to have that conversation of what's happening, where you are in specific content areas, what is the work that the instructional coaches are doing. District coaches who have been able to fund through special funding should be able to have conversation as well, to say this is what the school has been doing. So we've tried to even have a tiered effect that it's not only that you answer to the principal, but those at the district level who are helping build capacity and content are able to be part of that accountability. Mr. Campbell?
Uh,
Maybe?
theory is great, but I'm talking us, Beaufort County Schools,
Mhm.
these people that you're talking about that's gonna help build capacity, the executive director, the instructional coaches, are they trained and are they relative to their task in terms of knowing the schools, knowing the culture? Are we somehow directing that or training in that or
So,
anticipating?
very good point. So one of the first things should happen as our EDs and instructional coaches go to a school should be that opportunity for you to tell me the story of your school.
Who's the you?
You as the principal, you as that school leadership team, you as a team who comes to the table to speak with the ED and their team. It shouldn't be that you're coming in your first time getting to know one another,
I
right?
understand the
Right,
good
so-
world, that's in a good world, that's what you're looking for, in a real world, where I'm talking us, Beaufort County Schools, and I know at least half of them. And I wanna know, in terms of that, and with the transition we're having now with the administrators moving from one school to the next, how are we gonna approach it realistically in terms of where we wanna take them, including the principals, the instructional leaders, where we wanna take them in the next 2-3 years? Are we directing it from your standpoint and the executive directors, or are we feeding from what they tell us and kind of redirecting?
The goal is, and only because it's the training I've had, Mr. King, was very direct, very much trained in the model that's utilized from UV, University of Virginia. And that is a training model that right now the executive directors are being exposed to get onto the same page. So that we have a commonality of practice, expectation, and then be able to share those commonality and practice to our school sites. So when we have that conversation of us here in Beaufort, the expectation is we say yes to a position, is to follow the expectation of what you're receiving in training. And I strongly feel when you listen to the EDs, there's a strong conversation of Patrick having systems in place, organizing, they speak the language. It is a protocol of practice that I think has to be a little more polished for Beaufort County. And I think we have to be able to, because we recognize, as you said, I've heard this before, we have to give an opportunity for implementation. And in itself has to be able to have opportunity for feedback, right, and monitoring going back. It's good practice.
Yeah, I'm just, I don't know. I said, Kathy can speak to this, I'm sure, these days. But in education, they have this revolving appetite for change. And there's always a new system put in place for probably a minimum of 3 or 4 years, maximum of 7 to 8 years.
Mhm.
And there's no measuring tool, follow-up, success rate before it shifts into something else. Someone else comes in and they have a different model that they want to put in place. So that's why I'm asking the question primarily, are we certain where we are in terms of when we start this? So the expectations can be measured at the end, what you're expecting from what you're starting with.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, we'll know whether it was successful or not before we encourage or authorize shifts in the system. Because the next person might not be Mary Stratus, but it might be someone else coming in with the new system. And they're all proven to have worked in certain situations. Or they wouldn't be, something that you could read about and tell. They're all proven systems. Now, our problem here in Beaufort County, in my mind, is getting the match that works here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm asking, have we vetted enough of where we are and the expertise and skill set of what we have to assure that this thing is going to go forward? Or are you not prepared or willing to answer that question now.
I'll say two things. One, my expectation is to have the opportunity to have it come to full fruition under my tenure.
Okay,
That is my expectation.
okay, that means you're gonna be there for a while.
That is a commitment that I
The
make.
second thing is she's retiring tomorrow.
Not at this time.
Come to fruition.
Right, but it is absolutely my intention that this is something that we are able to do for the long haul here in Beaufort County. I need to share that with each of you in the room, I recognize. Second item is that it's taken a year of conversation with people to come to the point to put this on paper. I have to share that with each of you as
So
well.
that tells me
I've taken time to
the task is
listen.
difficult.
It is, the culture is culture is the heart, culture and beliefs are the two hardest things to break. And there's two ways of doing it. One is by being a technocrat, by showing the data. We recognize that as the easy approach to take. The harder approach is giving people the buy-in and part of the system for improvement. And that is the path that we are taking. I could be a technocrat very easily, but it is not the part that's gonna build human capacity amongst our people and have longevity. And the key word, and you're driving it, is sustainability, right? So
Okay.
I will go on to the next slide. Okay.
We do have a hard stop at 4:30.
Yes, ma'am, I'm driving fast. I will go to slide 7.
Yeah.
I want you to see who we're trying to build capacity within. It identifies principals, assistant principals, instructional coaches, classroom teachers. These are the areas that we're looking to build capacity. Key language I want us to recognize is that we're talking differentiation and access. I want differentiated programs to provide access for all students for learning. I think it's a comfortable language for us to land on. It does tie to the language of giving access and equity, but we're not saying that one size meets all principles, but I am saying principles, we need to have programs to meet the needs of our kids, okay? So this gives a little bit of an idea of the type of training we're gonna be adding. If I go to the next, I want us to recognize as well that we're including our social workers and behavior management specialists in our PD. So we're not just at isolation. Yes, sir.
Do we have any shortage in social workers?
Not that I know of,
No.
not that I'm aware of, Mr. Campbell, but I could inquire.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. If you do, I would like to know that Mrs. Swinton has not brought that to my attention.
So you have a social worker at
I believe we have,
each cluster or each school?
I believe, sir, that there is a social worker at almost every school. There are about, I think, 3 or 5 who share 2 schools.
Okay. All right.
We hired some more, I think.
Yeah, they onboarded a few extra, yeah. But the last I checked, we had a few who did share a few schools.
Yeah, that's.
As we go to slide 9, and I have to make mine larger, I do apologize. Yeah. What you see is, again, just a similar language, but I wanted you to get a taste of some of the instructional resources that we'll be integrating. We are aware that this past year we had iReady as a pilot. That was available at every school. It's going to be available again at every school this year. A more finite use of it will happen at tier 2 because it ties with IEPs and goal setting. Dreambox, we've been able to acquire that from K through 8.
So $3.
Yeah, that's.
Dreambox is a math resource.
Okay, Matt.
Right. Since the time that this went to print, we have confirmation of it being available from K through 5 from the state, and we're going to actually go K through 8 as a district. If we look at the tier 3, it's a requirement, so we have iReady. We recognize reading A through Z is a lower level reading skill. It's not as Ortham Gillingham or Wilson on the phonetic but it is small words. Cat,
Pat.
yes, okay. Again, we have the Dreambox available for a tool, Qantas and Pinnell that's utilized. And then we're adding scholastic literacy to 13 schools this academic school year. The reason and why, and I want to give that, if there's one thing of anything, It is a prescriptive model of teaching. Some of our tier 3 schools have much more rotation of personnel. The way scholastic literacy is developed, the teacher can walk through who is highly skilled and walk through the teacher edition easily, or someone who's new to the profession can walk through, it tells you step by step. It is highly focused on content vocabulary and fluency and ties closely with iReady. We also,
It's not a call and response, is it? A call and response, like, or that, what was that program?
oh, no, it has it does have a consumable, and
Okay,
it also has a software component tied. You'll get a little more information regarding the contract of service at our board meeting. I have also at tier 3, again, since this, Reading Plus, what you'll see on the secondary slide, has given us a commitment for tutoring for 4th and 5th grade for free for next year.
That's awesome.
So I'm not having replication of services because a child will burn out, right?
Yeah.
You keep giving the same thing, what happens, they get bored.
Yeah.
So I'd like our tutoring to have something a little different, and Reading Plus has come forward to give that to us for free as well.
What is no rating?
Oh, you're ahead of the class. Let me go there. Okay, I'm gonna go there. So on slide 10, there's 2 additions on slide 10, actually 3. One is Reading Plus. That would be our secondary reading block, a requirement of 90 minutes a week. We have Sreb Math. That is the Southern Regional Educational, the B stands for, I do apologize, but it is a math program that does application of math. That would be as an add-on. My middle schools are picking that up. And No Reading is a writing software. It is intuitive. It is also available. I piloted it last year at the high school. All things I pilot came on as COVID came on, so I extended it through this year. But it is an intuitive writing program that helps you actually correct as you're writing. Also gives the teacher who's writing units and lessons. So this year, where we saw an increase of application was with ACE courses of general paper on Battery Creek. It's available to all our secondary schools this coming academic year. Writing is an area, when you look at statistically, it is 16% of the SE ready. And we're not that strong at writing. I'm waiting to see our writing scores coming in now.
No one's strong in writing anymore.
no. No one teach how to write a 5-paragraph essay.
It's amazing what's going on at like high level college, but I don't want to get off track.
But what I will share with that comment that both of you made, one of the things we're working on this summer is that if you go through the scientific method of writing a science lab, it's no different than writing a strong essay. So we're having our science teachers actually work with our ELA. They've had some training going on now over this week, and actually it ends I have 2 days of planning for them, so it goes Thursday and Friday. But how to do both, the relationship between both.
That's what they're complaining about in science, is that no one can write. So you make all these great discoveries, you can't tell anybody about.
You can't do the narrative, right? So if we go to slide 11. This is, once again, I highlighted the Edgenuity Lab in a different color, right, for our high schools to have that opportunity of flexibility for a different approach for giving kids who, again, those children who work, those children who maybe just need a few credits, that student who Mrs. Middleton wants to do anything, get married, or out of her campus and cuts the deal, look, 24 credits, you're out of here, kids. But it gives some opportunities and flexibility to our schools. And I think that's critical. I have it highlighted until I get to the point where it's subject to personnel to be picked up. Feedback from a few of the high school principals I spoke with, like, when are you getting that for us?
Do all of our high schools still have computer labs?
They've actually started putting them back in place. And I will share with you, Mrs. Rogan, it was a comment from facilities, it's like, oh, you're one of those? Yeah, I am one of those. I think you need a computer lab so I can have monitoring. Okay, and able to circulate and help the kids who are on these Edgenuity after school or flexible time of day.
So the computer lab is like an internet cafe type thing.
Very well put.
Well, no, because it could be computer
Yeah.
lab is like
Yeah.
doing computer programming.
Yes.
Can we get rid of typing as a computer class?
No, not really.
It's
A lot of tests are still timed.
No, typing, I would just say,
No, but a lot of tests
Tests
are still timed.
Right.
So they need to type,
Keyboard.
Keyboard.
And there are a lot of major tests, especially the bar exam. If you cannot type, you're not going to make it.
Don't you have to get through law school though without learning
You
how to
can't, you
you will not.
can't.
Right.
Yeah, it's the thing my son, everything he did, he wrote his in a
Have
blue
you all
book.
seen kids though on the, I'm just saying, on the keyboard? My son has like a keyboard this big in 18 colors and.
Typing has to stay.
Yeah, keyboarding is necessary.
Keyboarding.
Yeah, we learned the typing.
So I wanted to give you a little taste of some of the additional programs that we started putting into place. You'll see a little more of it this academic year. If you had this on your own, these are 2 hyperlinks on the site, on the secondary side for a little research, but I'll start with the elementary. We worked with South of the Broad and North of the Broad for 2 accelerated GT programs. One is at Bluffton L, another one is Mossy Oaks. We've already started providing them the additional testing, instructional materials, looking at those kids who, if I could kind of pull you up a little, you may not be GT certified yet, cluster our children together. We also try to look at testing some of our children, you know what? Accelerating. In other words, Mr. Campbell is testing off the chart on Iowa, and he's gonna be able to do what? 3rd grade, take part of 4th grade, 5th grade, take part of 4th grade, and truly accelerate. And we partnered with the middle school to that feeder pattern, so they recognize as this happens, in 2 years, potentially, you may have younger 6th graders coming in, almost testing into going to algebra. So we have it's an incubation. 2 of the schools already have identified kids. One of the schools in particular is already getting students back in from the private sector, because the word travels very quickly when these type of programs start.
So the pushback right now is the fact that kids are, they're getting algebra too early. So there's a huge pushback to not push kids into algebra, in addition to which it's hurting them on the SAT, ACT. Because they're taking that in 10th grade and they haven't had algebra since 4th grade, for 4 years.
What I can share is, because I've spent a big chunk of my life working with kids in math and trying to get them ready to get into college. What I have found with the younger children taking algebra, when they are truly accelerated children, don't hold them back.
No, I agree. I just think that anyway, that's another, we can talk about math another time. Sorry.
So we notice we're increasing the amount of STEM. You will hear tutoring being prescriptive and practice with fidelity. That is a language that so if you're doing your meetings, we're identifying the needs of children. Tutoring should not be a blanket, it should be something that is tailored and fit to our children. Secondary, we recognize ACE, we have the feeder pattern of Cambridge, from Roberts Falls International Academy to Battery Creek.
Oh, Bear Creek's gonna have Cambridge?
Yes.
And May River.
May River, and I'm hoping for one middle school, south of Broad.
At some point, can you, not today, but will you talk about why Cambridge?
Okay.
And
Yes, I
also-
will. But I will share with you with Cambridge, one of the things that works with Cambridge, it does give you a lot more diversity at testing. It gives a lot more opportunity at testing, and has had a higher passing rate in some areas of its passing, providing kids a little more access. So if you look at the data tied to Cambridge, if you can look at this on a hyperlink,
I'd love to.
you'll see a little information sharing the why on how it is provided access for more
Because
children.
we're doing that instead of IB. Cambridge and IB are comparable, right?
I wouldn't say at this time that that's something for a conversation, but they're not. STEM, again, in the secondary at the middle schools, as well as at the high schools. I did bring something I wanted to share with you, but I'm gonna run out of time, and tutoring. Again, the last item, I need my slide, basically is sharing, I'm gonna change this language, you'll hear me again using language tight and loose. When I went to print, this was non-negotiables. So Mr. Kim, that's again for my UB training, I have to make sure I polish and fix my vocabulary for my executive directors. These are some of the areas that I'm saying, there's no compromising on this. We're doing standard-based instruction. It's not you're teaching a story, you're teaching what standards are tied to a story. And the last item, if I could share, this is actually from Ms. Melissa Murray, and it's a quote that I love when she said it, so I had to capture it. It is tied to the why of professional learning communities. A quick conversation, which was not part when this was prepared, I finalized some work with USCB in order to have graduate credit courses for our teachers. So that they are in the content area tied to STEM. Okay, I do have one graduate course in the area of AP literature for the high school. We've already filled the majority of these seats. We're gonna replicate these opportunities south of the board as well. I picked up a few schools also south of the board. I'm being able to pick up part of this funding for this out of the MSAP grant. So I tried to align from that MSAP grant for giving true graduate work studies for our teachers. And then we're gonna, hopefully this is gonna be something cyclical, that is gonna be ongoing, that we will have graduate professional development for our teachers in the area. These are specifically in math, algebraic thinking, coding, science with coastal kingdoms, and in the classroom, so they can have application of content in the classroom. A large amount of focus is elementary. I do want to share that because that is a weaker area that we recognize that you don't have as much content. So that is the last item forward.
Yeah, sure.
So you're saying graduates, is like a master's degree in education type level classes?
So, well, the answer to that is yes. These courses are at a graduate level, they're not undergraduate credit.
Are we paying for it? Is it free to teachers?
The teachers do have to pay for the registration, which is a $40 fee. The district will be incurring through special funding on the MSAP grant, the cost of the course, say that 3 times fast, as well as the textbooks. I will try to negotiate the textbook price less. The course itself is $4,000.
Oh, right.
You just have to have a certain amount of graduate level courses for certification.
So
Right.
what I'm winding up to is, in theory, this could be a benefit to teachers that you could get your graduate degree while teaching for free if you come teach at Beaufort County Schools.
Very good recruiting point, because I just want to build on that statement, because one of the other things I'm working with them is building the capacity of me as an educator. I want to be able to be an adjunct professor for USCB or TCL. I want to be able to do master's level courses to finish the necessary content courses, so we can take away that barrier of transportation for dual enrollment and have more of that happening within our school sites. That is going to take about a year to roll out. I need everyone to recognize that doesn't happen overnight, because you have to have a committed teacher who wants to go get the courses, and they're going to have to sit for the courses, so that that course then can become an adjunct at one of the colleges at their respective high school.
So the teacher can then turn around and teach that as an adjunct to right in their building, I think is what they're saying.
Okay, but you said those are elementary education
Now,
classes.
and that, I said another initiative is that I'm doing that as well.
Gotcha.
And that we haven't finalized that with USCB, but that one I'm working on.
But that is
so.
a big selling point that a lot of schools are doing now, is that you basically, it's a residency program, you come teach, you get money, you get your graduate degree for free, and then bumps you up the salary
It'll
scale.
bump you up the salary scale. I will be able to help you to some extent on your own. But what are we also getting out of that? Deeper content knowledge of our educators.
Well, yeah, it's a win-win,
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
but I think it's a big win.
I agree with you. Okay,
Any other
and that
questions?
concludes my presentation.
Any questions, comments?
It's only got about 4 minutes.
So, Mary, you're gonna present this at the board, to the full board?
I will present it at the full board meeting. I will also be presenting it to the assistant principal training on Friday morning.
Okay, and you mentioned that, the recovery plan in here. I think the board's really interested in seeing that recovery plan that was just recently approved. So is there a plan down the line to share that with the board?
My goal is that that is a yes, especially out of the academic recovery plan that was tied to the fiscal recovery plan. That would be something that I would suggest to the board to have a presentation and separate agenda. I would ask that you combine, when the time comes, ESSER 3. So I think it'd be good to have ESSER 2 and 3 together, but the ESSER 3 application has not been submitted yet.
Would it be tremendously difficult when you make the presentation to include a blurb, like just cut and paste, about like iReady, Note Ready, the different ones, so that we don't have those questions in the meeting?
So I think part of your executive session at board will be the contract part of iReady, Reading Plus, and Scholastic, so that will be 3. So I could add in Dreambox, but I'll add each of them in as well.
Well, because this is also public, so.
Yeah,
in
I'll
theory,
add them in.
You guys are all teachers, so you're
Right.
like nodding along, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, but and many of the parents have already been exposed to those programs, so they see it from that side, from the public, those who don't have children. And I could add that, if that's okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, future topics, at our next
That means I
meeting,
haven't done my tomorrow.
do you wanna bring this back? Bring, the recovery plan, or what is ESER 2 and ESER, it won't be ready yet.
I don't think ESER 3 will be completed, we'll be close. If our next meeting is towards the end of July, we will be close to ESER 3 being completed. It may not have been obviously approved yet,
Right,
but I could bring forward ESER 2 and footprint of 3.
okay, the fourth, Wednesday in July is July 28th. So if we scheduled our meeting that day, you won't be here, okay.
So our next meeting for academics would be July 14th. Or don't you meet the second? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we meet the fourth Thursday.
The 4th,
or
okay. So the 28th, I have to, okay.
Yeah, July 28th is the fourth, but we could move it to
Correct.
July 21st because Angela won't be here. Will you be here on the 21st?
Sure.
You're gonna be celebrating, you're gonna be out
No,
somewhere.
not quite.
Oh,
I'll be in churches. I will be able.
no.
Those-
So can
Neither
we,
one of those, because you're up to your, I got it. So, where do we go? We can just
You want to
meet,
do it without me and I can catch up.
yeah?
Mhm.
Mel, does one of those dates work better for you?
I'd make it work.
So are we doing the 21st or the 28th? I'm kind of confused.
Well, we haven't decided yet.
28th would,
28th would be better. Okay, let's do the 28th.
because we have an instructional meeting with
That's your
everyone.
regular meeting. Okay,
That's our regular, okay? And so, Angela won't be joining us, so we'll do it at, 4:30 on the 28th. Does that work? 4:30 on July 28th. And the topic of that meeting will be, revolving around our recovery plan. Right?
and SS2?
ESER 2, ESSR 2, and,
Whatever she has.
yeah, whatever she has. And ESER 2's already been approved, it's ESER 3 that will be.
And some of this information presented today is funded up, will be funded part of, so you may see a few topics. in there.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe when you present this, you may say we've got, funding came from ESER 2. The other thing that's still out there is the AR, SS
That would have to-
3,
that needs to
that
come up.
needs to come back. It wasn't ready yet to come back. So, okay? Anything else? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'm over adjourned.
Second that motion.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thanks, everyone.